Hi everybody and welcome back to AI in the Woods. Today we're going to talk about something really cool, and that is the idea that our thoughts live in space. What do I mean by this? So we all know that our bodies live in space. I can move forwards, I can move sideways, and I can jump up and down. So to be exact, we live in 3 dimensions. We sometimes name those dimensions. Sometimes we call them longitude, latitude, and altitude. And that reminds us that we live in that 3-dimensional box. Now, how do we navigate that box? We navigate that box using a very particular type of cells in our brain. In fact, 2 types of cells. They're called place cells and grid cells. And neuroscientists have shown that those are the cells that get activated when mammals, in general, navigate their 3D environments. And they're geared towards 3 dimensions. Now, the really interesting thing is that in recent years, neuroscientists have also shown that we navigate our conceptual spaces using those very same types of cells, grid cells and place cells. Now, what does it mean to navigate a conceptual space? Let's start with 2 dimensions. Imagine that instead of having a north-south axis and an east-west axis, you had instead 2 axes that correspond to particular properties of things. And maybe one property is polarity. How do I feel about something? Do I feel positive or negative about this thing? And maybe another, the other axis might be something that is called in psychology arousal. Do I get excited or not by this thing? And now think of a simple concept. Think of party. So party has high arousal, right? You go to a party and maybe you dance, maybe there's loud music, maybe you talk to people. There's a lot happening. So usually for everybody, a party is going to have high arousal, meaning it's situated quite far towards positive values of that arousal axis. Now, in terms of polarity, that's a bit more complicated. If you're an extrovert, maybe you love going to parties. You love the high arousal. So for you, on the polarity axis, a party might have a positive value. If you're an introvert, on the other hand, maybe the party has a negative value because it's too much for you. And that's really interesting because now look at what we've done. We've got a space in 2 dimensions, as if you were looking at a map. One dimension expresses polarity, the other dimension expresses arousal. And for 2 different people, the concept party is going to be situated at different points of that space, depending on how they feel towards parties. So we've now seen how we can take a simple concept and we can position it in a space. Now, other things might need other properties to be classified. Think of trying to classify birds, for instance. I might want to classify birds according to their size, according to their color, according to their neck size. And that would be 3 potentially more dimensions, depending on whether I've got 1 dimension for each color I know. So I might end up with a set of dimensions with a neck size dimension, a size dimension, and maybe a red dimension, a blue dimension, a black dimension, and so on and so on. And see what's happening? We've gone beyond 3 dimensions. So how is that going to work? Well, it is true that our perceptual system is geared towards 3 dimensions. We see everything around us in 3 dimensions. And in fact, it is likely that we navigate our conceptual space looking at 3 dimensions at a time, because remember, we use those grid cells and those place cells that we also use for spatial navigation. But probably the properties that we think are important to classify our environment conceptually are many more than 3. Meaning that actually your thoughts live in a multidimensional space. And if you look at the current AI systems, so systems that try to model the way that our concepts behave in the human brain, you will find that there seems to be a sweet spot around a few hundreds of dimensions. So it is possible that everything we can apprehend of reality can be expressed via maybe 300, 400 dimensions. Now you're probably asking, how is it that I can move in 300, 400 dimensions? And it's a bit bizarre, right? What we're saying now is your thoughts live in more dimensions than your body. That's a really strange thing to say. So in the next video, we'll pick this up again, and I will show you how you can actually navigate in multidimensional spaces right here in the forest. So tune back in, and we'll go traveling together in hundreds of dimensions.